Imagine that you end up finding a timid girl in the worst condition imaginable, who was thrown away by her father and family. As this girl saw the darkness that dwelled inside men, there was still some kind and actual humans left to change everything for her. The manga opens with our main protagonist, Harris, aggressively staring at a slave girl who had sneaked up on him due to the extreme cold. As they glared at each other in the pin-drop silence that surrounded them, the girl, in a weak voice, muttered a greeting and specifically called him master. As she started to panic a little, he was somewhat disgusted and instantly remembered something very important. He reached for his bag and thoroughly checked it. When he checked the gold coins he was carrying, it was clear he had been robbed. He screamed at her, telling her that she had stolen all his money for herself, and the poor girl started to mutter no. Now he was beyond angry. Since all the money he had earned from various jobs had just vanished in an instant, he confronted her with a loud and enraged voice. She replied in a weak voice, but he just ended up shaking her a little hard. When he did so, the timid girl ended up crying and trembling. For a brief moment, she had thought he was going to take out his frustration in a different way. He realized it would be a pain to do anything else now. He asked her in a more humane way, and she replied that he had used all his money to purchase her. As tears overflowed, she told him that he had ended up spending all his money to buy her. As she said this, we see the sad side of the girl. She had long and painful-looking whip marks all over her, and she had no weight whatsoever, and all we could really see were bones. It was clear that wherever she had lived, she was treated like trash and a stain on the humans. As he looked at her one more time, he reflected on how she was in a state where dying tomorrow would be a blessing for someone like her. He asked himself if he really bought a dying slave. He started to think hard about what could have happened yesterday, and recollected his memory. Yesterday was a big festival, and he had stopped by the trading company for his share of money that he earned from a quest. As the trading company's various items were being discussed, the receptionist handed over 25 gold coins. 5 adventurers exclaimed from pure thrill, stating how they would surely venture deeper and earn more and more. As they started to plan something, one of the people asked Harris to join them all for some drinks. As they all wore bright smiles, he grabbed his bag and wished them the best. He told them that he would surely do it later. As their faces suddenly changed, they started to whisper and gossip behind his back and reminded themselves that a thief would never be normal. As they mocked him for being unsociable trash, we get a point of view on how he is treated in society. He decided to just visit a different place, and as the chatter grew louder, he asked the waitress to give him some fresh ale and snacks. As he remembered how people treated him the same no matter where he went, he apologized for being a thief. His main responsibility in a party is to be a scout. That means he would have to open treasure chests that are tightly closed with magic, handle identifying the chests and traps, and also do the mapping for the place they are visiting. It is basically a useless job that has no real attack power or anything, and since this skill does not fall into a combat or defense meter, people treat him only slightly better than a dead and hopeless bandit. He cried out how he didn't mind drinking with them, but the things they would gossip about later would just poison him even more. He reflected on how the 2 women in the party were somewhat wary of him, and deep down, caused him trouble, and he would have surely gone to the invite if he was close to them, but he reminded himself that no one cared for a bandit. As the waitress served him the ale, he started to call out to her and tried to start a small conversation with her. She shook him off, and for a minute she analyzed everything about him, from his clothes, his appearance, and everything in between. Now he was just plain and simple, and as they say, money talks. With a fake smile, she refused since she was sure that he was not someone with money and would just bore her and unable to keep up with her desires for luxury and money. As she left, he just drank there. Now, in no way is Harris a wonderful person himself. Rather, he is the trash of society, and he recalled that society made him into what he is right now. He walked off and swore at her, asking if he looked that shabby to a witch like her. He decided to just visit the most expensive brothel and pay for its most expensive treatment. As he went there, he stopped by a place. However, things were not going in his direction. The old bouncer stopped him and asked him to leave. He added how the payments here were all done in gold and he should visit a cheaper place somewhere else. As he heard this, he snapped and immediately grabbed his collar and shouted at him to stop looking down on him and that he was not lowly. He shouted and told him that he had money as well. As the old man, a crooked person himself, threw a punch at his stomach, he told him that he knew he would surely have money since a thief would never be moneyless. He told him that he wouldn't fit with the status of their establishment, and that he should just disappear. As the fireworks burst loudly and the happy voices all around showed how he was just done with humans, he drank and drank. These people had failed him, and he had failed himself just like that as well. As he ended up bumping into a person, he immediately spun around and yelled at the top of his lungs at Harris. He ended up falling on a nearby table, and as their glares grew colder, they started pointing out everything and complained how he was a done-for-human. Now these words and gossips had been going on for so long that he had been building up poison, and it had been affecting him. As the surroundings just made him a sadder man, he cried out and begged them to stop, and he just walked into a nearby dark alley, which somewhat calmed him down a bit. He wondered if there would be a place where he had gone that would accept him, and he ended up bumping into someone's feet. As he heard an apology from someone who should actually just wait for Harris's apology, he glanced over to see a painful and sad sight. A girl was sitting on the ground, clenching herself in the cold and extreme weather. All over her body were torture scars and marks, and around her neck was a heavy metal choker. Her clothes were disgusting and so tattered that they had changed color, and the girl herself was so weak that she could just die from a slight push. As her eyes filled with hope also glared at him, he finally remembered how they both ended up meeting, and perhaps this was the time where all things went down for him. As he reflected on how he was too drunk to even remember anything, he questioned just why he would buy an almost dead slave. As she sat near him, she apologized again and again. He started to list the details of her body again, and mocked himself for wasting 3 gold on her, muttering how difficult it was to earn that money in the first place. He decided to just return her, and asked if she remembered the way to her previous place where she lived. Now, wanting to get rid of such a nuisance, he went back to the place where she was living before. The slave seller just completely switched off and started to spew how no one would buy her, and since they did business here, he simply couldn't return her. He added how he was drunk yesterday and ended up making a rash decision. The slave seller finally gave up as well and stated how he could buy her again, but the best he could do was 10 silver. Hearing such a price, Harris shouted and exclaimed how that was 1/5 of the original price. The slave seller started to explain to him why buying her was a waste of money. He spewed how buying her was a misfortune for anybody, and in the first place, her appearance and everything else about her was just useless. He cried out that if he were to buy her, it would be a loss for his business. He still pursued that he would sell her at a different place for much cheaper, or even sell her to a show house. Harris asked what a show house was, and the seller explained how the rich bought slaves like her, and then made them fight ogres. He added how this was entertaining for the rich and the ogres would do unimaginable things to girls and women, and in this way, he would make his money back. As he heard this, Harris ended up making a troubled face, and the poor girl herself was questioning if he would resell her again. Later, near a pond, he was chugging down water, and as he started to cough, he offered her the cup as well and told her to drink for herself. As her eyes widened, he added and told her to also wash her face. Now Harris had heard the messed up options the slave owner gave him, and he ended up bringing her here. As the poor girl started to wash her face, he was just done for. Not only had he spent everything, he also got scammed, and now he also has to take care of a girl he thinks of as a burden. He cried out how he had no money whatsoever, and from the side, the timid girl tightly held the cup near her chest, and with a hopeful and bright smile, she thanked him for allowing her to drink the water. As he saw her face, he reflected how her face wasn't that bad after all. Just as he thought of this, her stomach ended up letting out a national threat level alarm. As this was just a normal thing and somewhat sad, in the next instant, the girl curled up tight and pushed on her stomach to make it stop. As he saw her, she had thought of her hunger as something that would displease him, and she curled up to make the sound stop so he wouldn't notice it any further. With a weak and cracking voice, she started to mutter sorry. Now, Harris was somewhat trash, but he brought out a piece of meat and offered it to her. She wouldn't take it, as her hands were still, and her eyes were very tightly closed. Perhaps there was some sort of trauma that she had endured, which made her afraid of her own hunger. As she gradually opened her eyes and saw the food in front of her, she ended up grabbing it, and all the way, she was very fearful. Finally, she dug into the food, and he asked just how she could be treated so poorly. The girl started to eat it, and tears began to overflow. As she cried out for experiencing kindness from a thief, she couldn't believe that someone would even show her such kindness and mercy. As she wiped her snot and tears, he looked at her for a second, and he was sure that she had been enduring too much. He ended up deciding to just keep her for some time and maybe wait until she was a little grown up to at least carry her own weight. He reflected that since he had bought her, she could at least do some work for him here and there. As he grabbed his bag, he called out to her and asked her name. She replied and told him that her name was Tiana. As he let out a slight smirk, he told her that he would now be her master, and from this day forward, she would have to follow him no matter what. As two broken souls met, something truly beautiful would blossom. Tiana herself let out a big smile, knowing that her new master had taken her in. Now, from one look at her, it was clear that she would definitely need some better clothes and even a proper bath. He told her to just follow him for now. As she walked behind him and struggled to keep up, the whole crowd glared at the two of them as if they were some sort of outcasts. He brought her to a temple, and inside, the priestess he talked about earlier greeted him with a gentle smile. She told him how she would have loved it if he had joined them in the party. As he agreed, Elia was a renowned healer for the party, and her healing power could heal all scars and injuries. She asked if there was something she could help him with, and he told her to help him heal her wounds. As Tiana shows up, Elia's face changed. She ended up having a troubled and disgusted face. He added how he would like her to heal her scars that covered all her body, and the priestess actually thought that he did this to her. He added how he was worried that she couldn't really walk properly and requested her to check her legs as well. She grabbed Tiana's hand and told him that he was trash and the cruelest human she had ever seen. As he realized how she saw him and had misunderstood everything, she gave him a dead look and cried out how he enjoyed this and even lived up to his title as a thief. Now, her words actually hurt him more than anything. Just a few seconds ago, she was acting all nice, but now, without really understanding this situation, she accused him of something he never did. As her voice even alerted others nearby, he broke down one more time. As she started to spew how she misjudged him, he just couldn't believe that his point of view and his voice just didn't matter to anyone. Tiana, on the other hand, screamed out with everything that she had and told that dense priestess that she was wrong. As they glanced at her, she told her that Harris would never do something so cruel to her. Now, she could have easily put the blame on him and ran away, but she genuinely was a kind soul herself who just ended up in the worst situation imaginable. She exclaimed and made sure that all the gossiping masterminds heard the actual good things that he does. She told her that he had put his cloak over her when she was shivering and even gave her all the food that he had and never complained. She added that these wounds and scars were not something that he would do, and as she was screaming this, tears began to flow from her eyes, and she told that stupid priestess that he was a kind man who was misunderstood by everyone. As her troubled face shocked him for a second, that stupid priestess immediately lowered her head and apologized for creating a very painful situation for him. She added how her statements were cruel, and it was very bad to accuse anyone without any proper backstory. As he shook her off, he couldn't believe that he would actually see a day where someone actually acknowledged him as well. As she grabbed Tiana's hand and told her to wait outside and she would take care of everything for her, they walked near a building. Elia asked Tiana for her name. As they interacted, Elia reminded her that the water might be a little cold, and that she might feel a shiver and a sting throughout her body. As Elia began to wash her, it seemed like Tiana had just found a sister for herself. Tiana was still not believing everything that was happening to her, and Elia started to wash her hair as well. Elia apologized to Tiana for lashing out at her master, and added that it was a disgrace to hurt someone with words, especially for things he had never done. She asked Tiana how she ended up with him in the first place. When she was a child, she had everything a kid could want: a house and a family. One day, she was attacked by a monster, but her father ended up fighting it off, and along the way, he passed away from his injuries. Now, she was too weak to save him or do anything else, and when the monster took everything away from her, she was sold. As she began to understand things, she was sure that there was no word like mercy, kindness, or pity for her. Every day, the slave owner would torture her, beat her, and step on her. And with a cracking voice, she cried out to Elia that it all hurt so much. As Elia heard this and saw the sad sight, she confirmed that the bruising and scars on her back were all from intense beating that went on for years and years. In the next instant, Tiana let out a big scream and told her that she was happy to be with her master, and in the first place, he had never treated her poorly at all. As the poor soul let out a smile, she told Elia that she thought she would be fine with him. As Elia hugged that gem of a soul, she embraced her and told her how she would surely be fine now and nothing would ever happen to her anymore. As this would surely mark a bright moment in her life, Tiana learned that in the world there are all sorts of people, and the good people would always shine the brightest. As Harris waited outside, he couldn't believe that someone actually stood up for him. He questioned if he had done something so great that she would smile at him so much. From the side, someone called out to him, and as he glanced over, Tiana walked over to him, all dressed up from head to toe and looking like a different person. As the scars on her body also became normal, she was a different person. As Elia called out to Harris, she began to explain the horror that Tiana had shared with her. After her father passed away, her mother remarried, and her stepfather ended up selling her for some change and lied about her. She added how all her other siblings were helped and were not sold, and only she was thrown away for profit. As she gave a big bright smile, she requested him to take care of her. She went on and on about his greatness, and he added how he had a different idea when he found out about her. In the next instant, she began to find something to give him, and as she rummaged in a rather unusual place, she brought out a token of some sort, and shared how this was a temple friendship token that would surely be of great use. As he grabbed it, he muttered how warm it was, and as he realized the great thing she had given him, he exclaimed and told her how this was worth hundreds and hundreds of gold coins. She explained how he would get free treatment whenever he would show this, and with a gentle voice she told him that this was her way of thanking him for the great act he did. She added how she learned to never judge anyone from their looks and should only do that after knowing their heart. As she smiled and even praised his lockpicking skill, she exclaimed herself as well and told him how there were good people still left in this world. She waved off the treatment for him. Now, digesting so much gratitude in one day was a bit of a hassle for him, but he couldn't do anything. Later they walked off from the temple, and he explained to her how their way back home would take 7 whole days. And throughout the way, they would have to shelter outside, and he reminded her not to slow him down. As they walked, she became a different person. He ended up asking if her legs was already healed, and she jumped in joy to tell him that she was fine and could even run. She asked about his profession, and he obviously brushed her off and told her that he was an adventurer. To put that in a simple form, he works for money and would do anything, from carrying important documents to taking on requests of all sorts. His work also involves danger. As Tiana finally smiled and told him how he was amazing, he surely didn't know how to handle compliments. As he continued speaking, she asked about his sword, and he covered the real answer with something else. As they walked and walked, he added and pursued that they should camp outside. As he said this, he immediately noticed something and grabbed onto Tiana and hid behind a thick tree. As she questioned what was happening, he told her to quiet down and not make a noise. Now he wanted to take a shortcut back to his home, and it somehow backfired. As we heard a loud thud sound, ogres emerged into the forest looking for humans they could eat and women they could do horrible things to. As 3 giant-looking monsters ventured just near them, Harris was sure that the distance between them was good enough, and they could manage to sneak away. As he said this, the ogres started to sniff, and in the next instant, drool overflowed from their mouths, and Harris was sure that their plan had just failed. They started to mutter women over and over. One of the brutes muttered little girl and how they would do something unimaginable. These monsters were obviously not there to only kill. As Harris noticed that malice and their ability to track down, he threw Tiana over his shoulder and told her to hold on tight. As she asked if anything was wrong, he started to run with everything that he had. He reflected that he could handle them if he were to attack them separately, but he reflects that it would be impossible to fight them while protecting someone. The ogres noticed this as well and started to chase after them. Although their speed was slow, the problem was not the speed, but the good nose that they possessed, which allowed them not to lose track of their prey and plaything. They are slow and clingy, their strength is the main thing that pins down the target. As he ran and ran, he stopped for a minute and began to huff for air. Carrying another person in the dark was not so easy after all. As Tiana saw him all sweating and barely catching his breath, she ended up seeing a painful sight once more, and while making a troubled expression, she got off. As she mustered the courage, she was about to say something that would change him and the way he looked at her. She let out a beautiful smile with no malice, and told him with a gentle voice to leave her behind. As he looked at her innocent face, she added and told him that she wouldn't be able to handle it if he were to get hurt, and told him that she would do her best to buy him all the time he would need to run away. He exclaimed at her and asked if she even knew the horrible things they would do to her, and she clenched his clothes and told him in a weak voice that at this rate, both will be killed. As this gem of a soul actually didn't care for her life, tears began to flow once more, and she kept telling him that she didn't want anyone to die because of her. She told him that she was sorry for not being able to pay him back. As she began to mutter please, he let out a big sigh, and he petted her head and told her how they were not going to die. He shared how there were useful things that he could use here and there. In the next instant, he opened a pouch near his waist. With a confident pose, he lets her know that although he was not a warrior or a combat expert, a thief always has his own way of fighting. As Harris pulled out his sword, he became a changed man, ready to face the danger. Meanwhile, the hideous ogres were still roaming around, trying to find something. As they noticed a faint smell from the side, they looked over. From over the branches where Harris and Tiana had been standing earlier, they detected the scent of a woman. From a closer view behind the tree, Tiana's clothes became visible to the ogres, and they dashed towards the tree, muttering hideous words over and over again. As one went to check, there was nothing there to look at. As they realized this, they had no idea they had walked into a nightmare. From below, a thin, sharp wire wrapped around one ogre's right leg. Using the tree as leverage, Harris had made a trap for them. Now one of ogre ended up completely trapped, one of his feet utterly immobilized. Even his fellow ogres laughed at him and told him how the pleasure part is always the last. As the ogre tried to break free of the wires, suddenly his neck was covered with wire as well. Although he began to spew how that woman is only his to enjoy, in the next instant, Harris tightened the wire so hard that it went through his windpipe, and he dropped to the ground, not even knowing the face of his attacker. The two green ogres noticed how he died, and they also noticed that their partner was stabbed with a spike. Harris not only trapped them there but also started to play around with them. As one of the ogres began to feel fear, from the side, a shadow approached him, and in the very next second, Harris stabbed the ogre so fast that he didn't even have time to react or do anything. He stabbed and disappeared again, and the ogre just bled until he was dry. The last ogre was now fearful but on high alert. He let out a deafening sound to scare him off, and he began to smash the trees around him. Now, although ogres are dumb creatures, their strength is always something to fear, no matter what. As a tree fell down from a strike of his, he noticed Tiana's scream. He glanced over to see that a sound was coming from the cave. He began to walk toward it, and this time he was too pissed to even think about anything else. As he made his way there, Harris from the back tossed a stone to his head. Now this ogre was not smart, and immediately let out a big swing. He noticed that nothing was there in the first place, and soon, Harris started to toss out rocks everywhere. In the pitch-black forest darkness and pin-drop silence, this technique of his actually confused the ogre. As he began to analyze just where he could die, Orge kept thinking over and over again. It was clear that Harris had already won the psychological warfare, and as the gross ogre questioned reality, Harris tossed another stone and readied himself to strike from above. As the stone dropped near him, he glanced over to see, and in the next second, Harris jumped with swift feet and landed with the sword in his head. There we learn that he wasn't actually lying about his way of winning a losing battle. As the ogre dropped, he looked over to the cave and called out to Tiana. He asked her if she was fine, and he himself heard her scream for a minute. She came out and apologized. Harris had earlier used her clothes as a trap to draw in the ogres, and it worked like magic. He told her to cover up since she could get cold, and as they fled death itself, they both sat near a fire and both were just glad to be alive. She praised how he was very cool and how she was sure that she needed to sacrifice herself. She let out a smile and thanked him again. He explained how, with a dozen enemies, the best course of action to defeat them is to corner them and take out their forces one by one, and fighting head-on is just stupid. He also explained the unique skills of an ogre, but the main thing that he wanted to tell her was that finding a blind spot is the key to fighting a losing battle. As he let out a smile himself, he thanked her for helping out as well. She questioned how she was helpful, and he explained how her clothes managed to fool the ogres, and in this way, they followed the smell, and the distance between him and them closed. If he were to do this in a regular way, it would have surely tired him out. He thanked her and told her that he couldn't have done this without her. She added how she was scared when he asked her to undress, and as they both laughed, he handed her blanket and told her to sleep after enjoying her food. Tiana's journey to heal herself and the world around just started.